Flight of Venezuelan F-16s over a U.S. destroyer. What happens next? The 4th of September, 2025. The Caribbean Sea is calm and cloudless, as if created by God himself for a paradise vacation. But the American destroyer, USS Jason Dunham, is following its course, carrying out an anti-drug mission on international waters off the coast of Venezuela. And suddenly, two marks appear on the radar. These are Venezuelan F-16s launched from Barcelona Air Base in Anzoátegui State. They descend sharply, break through the clouds, and at an altitude of several hundred feet cross the destroyer's course. No gunfire, no missile launches, only the roar of turbines and a booming echo rolling over the deck. For some, a mere show of force. For others, it is a dangerous provocation, a step toward the abyss of war. Why did Caracas take this risk? What were its pilots trying to show? And why did the Americans not open fire, even though they had every right to? Today, we analyze one of the most notable incidents in early autumn 2025, the flight of Venezuelan F-16s over the destroyer Jason Dunham. Several seconds that could have become the beginning of a new war in the Caribbean region. First, a few facts. The incident occurred in the afternoon of the 4th of September, 2025, around 15:14 local time. The destroyer USS Jason Dunham was in international waters off the Caribbean Sea, about 75 miles or 120 kilometers from the Venezuelan coast. Recall that beyond 12 nautical miles, about 14 regular miles or 22 kilometers from shore, begins international waters. The ship was operating as part of an anti-drug trafficking operation, carrying out surveillance of maritime smuggling routes. At that moment, two F-16A Fighting Falcons took off from Barcelona Air Base in Anzoátegui State, Venezuela, officially for airspace patrol, but their flight path coincided with that of the American destroyer. According to the Pentagon, the aircraft approached the ship at a distance of about 3 miles or 5 kilometers, then performed a low flyover at a speed of about 600 miles per hour or 900 kilometers an hour. A spokesman for the U.S. Department of Defense called the pilot's actions provocative and noted that the American side did not respond in order to avoid escalation. Quote, "We tracked both aircraft from the moment of takeoff. All destroyer systems operated normally. No weapons were fired. But such maneuvers create unnecessary risk for both sides." In Caracas, however, it was stated that the F-16 flight was a routine mission within national border protection and that American ships approached too close to Venezuela's exclusive economic zone. In fact, we have two versions of the same event. For the USA, it is a demonstrative overflight. For Venezuela, it is an act of sovereign control. And for everyone else, it's an alarming signal that in the skies over the Caribbean, it once again smells like war. The summer of 2025 marked a period of growing tension in the Caribbean region. The United States intensified naval operations against drug trafficking and the illegal transportation of oil, which, according to Washington, were carried out under the cover of Venezuelan military structures. The destroyer USS Jason Dunham was involved in exactly such a mission, tracking ships suspected of smuggling fuel to Cuba. Caracas perceived this as an intrusion into its strategic sphere of influence. Venezuelan state media called U.S. actions neo-colonial patrolling and an encroachment on sovereignty. The actions of the Venezuelan authorities are easily understandable. The country's economic situation is catastrophic. According to forecasts for 2025, inflation in Venezuela is expected to reach about 71.7%. The poverty rate under NCOVI methodology in 2023 exceeded 51.9% of the population. This means that more than half of Venezuelans live on less than $1.5 a day. Such numbers create an extremely harsh economic and social environment. Millions of people face shortages of food, medicine, and basic services. Hyperinflation in 2025 already exceeds 172% annually. Therefore, for Nicolas Maduro, it becomes vital to have an external enemy, a tool that allows him to rally the population around the idea of a national threat, distracting attention from the economic nightmare and tightening control while suppressing internal opposition under the pretext of defending the country. The two F-16s that flew low over the American destroyer became exactly such a symbol, a brief but loud television gesture aimed primarily at a domestic audience. For the military, it was also a way to show that despite worn-out equipment and international isolation, the Venezuelan Air Force can still act. But in such a demonstration, there is always a fine line, where one wrong move or a single miscalculation can turn a show of force into an armed incident. As one U.S. Navy officer later noted, it was not a battle, not an attack, but a demonstration, a signal, a political gesture expressed in the language of speed and risk. Now let us look closely at how the destroyer USS Jason Dunham reacted to the Venezuelan fighters. A few minutes before their appearance, the radar operator had already detected takeoff from Barcelona Air Base. The ship's systems tracked the two aerial targets from the moment they left the coastal zone. When the F-16s emerged from the clouds and began to descend, the ship did not change course. The destroyer's commander, Commander Aaron Jefferson III, ordered, "Set condition to readiness. Observe, without opening fire." The Spy 1 radar of the Aegis systems automatically tracked the targets, transmitting data to the Combat Information Center. There, the operators calmly watched the planes approach, cross the line of flight, and depart. The Phalanx CIWS close-in defense systems remained in passive mode. Their barrels did not even turn. Yet, a single signal would have been enough to activate them in a split second and unleash a storm of 20mm armor-piercing shells at 4,500 rounds per minute. But no such command came. The Americans acted by the book. Do not yield to provocation. Do not give the opponent a reason to claim hostile U.S. actions. Later, the Navy press release stated, the destroyer continued its mission in international waters. Maneuvers by Venezuelan aircraft were recorded. No weapons were employed. This short episode became illustrative. The modern Aegis system had tracked the Venezuelan aircraft long before visual contact. For the destroyer's crew, it was not a threat, but a routine reminder of how different generations of military technology are. Two F-16s from the 1980s against a ship capable of tracking and engaging dozens of targets hundreds of kilometers away. The Americans understood they were facing not enemies, but actors in a political performance. Therefore, the ship simply logged the data, held its course, and continued patrolling. From a military standpoint, this incident changed nothing. Venezuela was, and remains, a minor power compared to the United States. It would take merely a twitch of the U.S. military's little finger to crush the Venezuelan army. But in a political sense, this episode became a symbol, a brief yet resounding signal that was heard far beyond the Caribbean Sea. Washington regarded the Venezuelan F-16 flight as a provocation coinciding with U.S. Navy operations against oil and drug smuggling. The State Department declared that the United States will operate in international waters and airspace in accordance with international law. Caracas responded in kind. The Venezuelan Ministry of Defense called the Americans' actions an intrusion into our strategic area of interest and promised to firmly defend national sovereignty. In reality, this is diplomatic choreography, a familiar dance of mutual statements where every step is calculated for a domestic audience. For Nicolas Maduro, the episode became a convenient stage. Amid hyperinflation, collapsing wages, and mass migration, millions of Venezuelans live on the edge of survival. The Americans, in turn, see this as a test of reaction, a probe of the limits of what is allowed, and every such incident, even without shots fired, raises regional tension where any mistake by a pilot or radar operator can turn a show of force into a real catastrophe. For the U.S. Navy, the episode ended before journalists could even learn about it. The destroyer USS Jason Dunham calmly continued its course toward Colombia, maintaining standard patrol mode and unchanged readiness. The report sounded dry, contact observed, no threat detected. But just a few days later, analysts noticed another piece of news. 10 F-35 Lightning II fighters landed at an airfield in Puerto Rico. Officially, these were routine exercises planned in advance. Unofficially, it was a clear signal of presence. Modern F-35s capable of detecting targets hundreds of miles away and sharing data in networked combat are a visible reminder that U.S. technological superiority in the region remains absolute. A clash with Venezuelan F-16s built in the Cold War era would resemble not a battle, but a beating. A single F-35 is capable of doing what an entire squadron of older aircraft was never designed to do. For Washington, the F-35's appearance in the Caribbean is not a show of force for its own sake, but a confirmation of readiness to control the region and prevent local provocations from escalating into something greater. For Caracas, it is yet another reminder that in such games with